This is one of those stories that is hard to believe. The ups and downs of my life could be made into a movie. I have been happily married for over 30 years, or so it seemed to me. I have 3 children whom I love dearly. I own my own business that started out as a service station, gas station, if that makes more sense to you. Now it is also a convenience store. I'm not rich, but I make a pretty good living. Let me start by saying that a few years ago, my son was hospitalized. He was 28 years old at the time. He is married, has a wife and 2 children. He was diagnosed with some kind of kidney problem. My wife, Annabelle, whom I called Annie, and I feared for our son's life. The doctors told us that if they couldn't get the kidney problem under control, he might need a kidney transplant. We didn't know what to do to help our son. The doctor told us that we could talk to family members in case a transplant was necessary. Of course, it was about my son, so I went to the lab where they checked my status and determined if I would be compatible. My wife didn't know I had done this. I decided to give him a kidney before telling the rest of the family. The test came back the next day and we were not a match. I asked the doctor why. After all, he was my son. What was wrong with my kidneys? I told the doctor quite loudly that I had had a few beers, but I didn't smoke. The doctor was a little embarrassed, but I didn't care. I told him how I felt. Finally, the doctor asked me to come into the office. Mr. Weller, you and your son are not a match because, according to the test, you are not his biological father. I'm sorry to have to tell you this, but you are raising your voice too loudly. I will tell you that we have made mistakes before, so my assistants are running the test again. I was almost in shock as I walked out of the office. He has been my son for 28 years. I couldn't believe this was happening. I didn't want to tell Annie about it in case there was a mistake. I have to say, when I saw her, I looked upset. Everything you can imagine went through my head. What about Janice, my oldest daughter? Or Mandy, the little love of my life? Were they my children? Janice was 26 at the time, and Mandy was 20. God, how I hoped the doctor was wrong. It had been 2 days and I still hadn't recovered. Of course, part of that had to do with the possible death of my son, and part of it had to do with whether he was my son at all. Annie, Brad's wife, Gail, and I were sitting in the waiting room. The doctor came out and said, "I have good news." I was so excited I thought he was going to tell me that the test was wrong and that my kidneys were perfect. But instead he had good news, or rather better news for Brad. Brad's kidneys are responding to treatment. He won't end up needing a transplant. In fact, his body is adapting so well to the treatment that he could be discharged in as little as a couple days. He will have to watch his diet, but otherwise he should make a full recovery. Everyone was so happy for Brad. The women were crying and Annie kissed me. There was so much relief on her face. I hadn't told her about the test yet. I would go back and talk to the doctor the next day. I asked Janice, Mandy, and Annie to take a DNA sample. They asked why it was necessary, and I explained to them that if any of us had a problem similar to what Brad had, the doctor would be able to prescribe treatment much faster if he had that information. Annie was a little nervous, but agreed. The others didn't hesitate and simply swabbed her mouth. Janice took one from her kids and husband so they would be ready if there was a problem. The next day I went to the doctor at the hospital and gave him all the samples. He gave me the bad news. Brad and I are not blood relatives. I asked him to analyze all the samples I gave him and put them on record so that other family members could get the information if needed. I'll pay for all the tests. Mr. Weller, are any of them your family? They are all my family. 2 daughters, sons-in-law, grandchildren, my daughter's children, and of course my wife. I want to know if those designated as Janice and Mandy are my biological children. Even though they are adults, they are my children and have been all their lives. A few days later, Brad was released from the hospital. He had another week to recover and then he was able to return to work. Everyone was so relieved that he wouldn't have to undergo dialysis or worse, a transplant. I tried to stay calm, but it wasn't easy. I really needed to know if this girl was my blood. Annie asked me almost every night why I was acting so strange. I would just tell her that we had been through a lot in life, and I was thinking about our children, and it wasn't a lie. I came home from work one evening, and Annie was sitting in a chair at the table, looking through some papers and crying. I realized it was the results from the hospital. They must have come in the mail. When did you do this and why? She asked. I went to get my kidneys checked so I could give them to my son. Since I was his father, I figured it was my responsibility. When the doctor said I was not his biological father, I sent the test to the girls. I don't know if they are mine or not. As I was picking up the papers, Annie said, Janice is not yours, but Mandy is. At this point, she was crying hard. What happens now, Dan? I stood there unable to find the words. I didn't know what was going to happen next. After 30 years of marriage, I had just found out that my two children, whom I had supported their entire lives, were not mine. I looked at Annie. We talk and talk some more. Maybe we'll stay together, or maybe we'll split up. Dan, that was over 28 years ago. Can't we leave the past in the past? No, we can't. You had sex with someone, and I want to know whose children I've been supporting their entire lives. According to these tests, Janice and Brad are brother and sister. That means you've had sex with someone for at least 5 years. So it wasn't a one-time fling or a mistake. Who the hell did you have an affair with? Hell, it must have happened in the first year of our marriage. It was Harvey. I had an affair with him. It was stupid, wrong, but it's over. I think it's over. Ever since Harvey Kittle died 25 years ago, he was one of our best friends, and you slept with him? Did his wife Mary know about it? Did she participate in your sexual escapades? Please, Dan, let's not discuss this. I love you. This is all ancient history. Can't we just move on? Are you out of your mind? What the hell is going on with you? We got married, and within a year, you started having sex with Harvey. You have his child that I raised as my own, and 2 years later, while you were still sleeping with him, we had a daughter that I'm raising as my own as well. If he hadn't died shortly after Janice was born, you'd probably still be having sex with him. Thank God at least one of my children belongs to me. Are you ready to explain all this? Annie cried, but I didn't believe it. I wanted to know the truth. I deserved to know the truth. Unlike the movies, I could handle the truth. I know you and Harvey have always been friends. I always loved him, but he chose Mary over me. He got her pregnant. I loved you too, but not as much as Harvey. After he and Mary got married, I was very depressed. You asked me to marry you, and I did it half out of spite. I wanted Harvey to know that I went on living in spite of him. So you married me to spite Harvey, and to spite him even more. You ended up having sex with him behind my back, I asked. You were driving the tow truck a lot back then. Mary was working during the day, and Harvey stopped by to see you. At least that's what he said. I didn't plan it, it just happened. I don't have any excuses. We had a sexual relationship, but I knew I still loved him. He would come to me and always told me that one day we would be together. We just didn't need to rush things. I was a child, and as long as he made love to me, I didn't care. He stopped seeing me after I got pregnant with Brad. I was really mad at him. He came over and saw Brad and asked if the baby was his. I told him I didn't know, but I wasn't going to say anything until he married me. He laughed at me and said you could raise his baby. Do you really believe I'm that stupid? It just happened? What just happened? If you're going to convince me that it just happened, you're stupider than I can imagine. If you stop seeing him, what about Janice? Did it happen to her too? I told him he wasn't allowed in our house unless you or Mary were here. I had feelings for him, but I found out he was just using me for extra sex. One day he came over and forced me to have sex with him. He said if I refused, he would tell you about Brad. He hurt me. He didn't make love to me. He hurt me a lot. When he left, he laughed and said he hoped he had put another child in me. I couldn't tell you about it. I didn't want to lose you. Shortly after Janice was born, Harvey was in a car accident. I was saddened but relieved at the same time. I could finally put all the cheating behind me, and we could start living a normal life. I loved you more and more. Our life was good, wasn't it? I've spent my whole life trying to make it up to you. I know we had our differences, but overall we had a good marriage, didn't we? Annie asked. Yes, our marriage was good. But now that I look back, I see that it was all based on lies. You cheated on me. You married me while loving another man. You had a child with another man, and then you said you were raped and got pregnant again without telling me anything. And now you're telling me to just forget about it. I don't think I can, and I don't want to. I'm going to go to our lawyer and start divorce proceedings. Dan, you can't. What about our kids? What are you going to tell them? I'll leave that up to you. Just so you know, I don't think you were raped, and you would have continued to have sex with him if he hadn't been put away. You have 1 week to tell me your story for the kids. After that, I'll tell them the truth. I take it Brad and Janice don't know that I am not their biological father. Of course you don't. No one knows except me, and now you. Please, Dan, they love you. Don't hurt them by telling them that a man they've never met is their father. I am their father, and they are my children. Nothing will ever change that. I've been with them their whole life, and that's not going to change. I think we'll both live here until the contract is finalized, unless you have a lover in mind. That's inappropriate, Dan, and you know it. No, that's the problem. I've been with you for 30 years and I don't know you. I'll move my things into the guest bedroom. I don't want anything more to do with you. Annie started crying, and I got up from the table and started moving my things into the guest room. 2 days later, I got a call from the store. They said that my wife's car had driven over a guardrail and hit an embankment. According to them, it looks like she was speeding, going too fast and didn't have time to turn. She was pronounced dead at the scene. The sheriff questioned me about any problems my wife may have had. I replied that to the best of my knowledge there were none. He said he was classifying it as an accident, but was going to hold the report until the autopsy. I couldn't imagine having to drag all the dirty laundry out into the light of day now. I loved her, but I also hated her, if that's possible. I called all the kids and told them about my mother's death. I told them I would go to the hospital to identify the body. They could call a few relatives and relay the news. I knew it was a shock to everyone, even me. Now it was on my conscience. Had she committed suicide or was it an accident? A few days later, the autopsy came back clear. Except for the blood pressure medicine, the coroner found nothing. Her death was ruled accidental. At the funeral, I grieved for her. Even though I was going through a divorce, I still had strong feelings for her after 30 years together. I was glad I had not yet met with a lawyer. No one needed to know about Annie's secret affair. I would have to live with it. Nothing good would come of telling my children about it. The day after the funeral, my 2 daughters and daughter-in-law came to the house. I asked them to take all of my mother's personal belongings and divide them amongst themselves. All I asked for were a few of our family photos. No one can understand how bad I felt unless they have gone through something similar themselves. My mind was constantly spinning with what-if questions. What if I had never taken that test? What if I had never told Annie about it? What if I hadn't told her I was leaving her? Would any of that have changed, or was she just going too fast that day? Chapter 2. Get Involved. All of this happened 2 years ago, just before the holidays. And here I was, alone again for the holidays. My son and oldest daughter now live about 100 miles away from me. I told them I could come up for a day or two during the vacations. Mandy was in college and said she would go to England with friends for the vacations. The trip was organized by the college. She had asked me about it a few months ago. She was worried that I would be alone. I tried to explain to the kids that I had been living alone for 2 years now. I spent every day at the service station, Shiori shop, and was never alone there. One day I was sitting in my big comfy chair, watching a few shows on my old TV. A commercial came on that I had seen over and over again about donating $24 a month to give a child in a third world country 3 meals a day, a place to live over their head, proper medical care and schooling. What the hell, do people really believe that? Don't get me wrong, I'm all for feeding the hungry and helping those who can't help themselves. But if I could do all that for $24 a month, I should have moved there myself. Sorry, but I don't like to send money and hope it goes to help children. For those who do it and believe in it, I wish you success, and God bless you. However, it did put a thought in my mind. The next day while I was at the store, one of our local priests came by, and I asked him if the church was doing one of those Christmas campaigns where they put up a tree and then write on it the names of families who need help for the holidays. Yes, Dan, we do that kind of campaign. Do you have a last name you'd like to publicize? No, Pastor Jim. I need the name of a family I can help for the holidays. Great, Dan. Just come to the church and pick a name. The Christmas tree is pretty full this year. A lot of people are out of work. Jim, can you give me the name of someone you think really needs help? I don't want it to be a family having a hard time with a husband who just got laid off. I want it to be a family whose help during the holidays will really make a difference. I'm not just going to give a child a toy. I want to make this a holiday they will never forget. Pastor Jim smiled at me. I think he realized that I wanted to make a difference in my family's life. Dan, I think I have the perfect family for you. We have a young widow with 3 children. They moved here from the big city last year. Her husband was shot and killed during a drug deal gone bad, and she moved here to try to give the kids a fresh start in life. Okay, Jim, thank you so much. I know I'm not the church-going type, but I want to help someone this year. I'll come back later and get the name of the family. When I told Pastor Jim that I didn't like church, he understood what I meant. I believed in God or something bigger than myself. When Annie was alive, I went to church twice a year. I always heard a sermon about where Jesus was born and when he died on the cross. The rest of the time I attended weddings and funerals. Carmela Wilson was the name on a scrap of paper I took off a tree in the church. A widow with 3 children, an address, and a phone number. Pastor Jim told me she worked as a waitress at Joe's restaurant. I think I knew who he was talking about. I've eaten at that restaurant dozens of times in the last year, if not more. I bet the waitress named Carmen was called exactly what Jim told me her name was. And I would go into the store and make sure everything was under control. I was a pretty hands-on boss. I decided to stop by Joe's diner and talk to Carmen. As I walked inside, I looked around, and Joe's waved at me. We'd been friends since we were kids, plus, of course, we were both business owners, which made us a little more social. I sat down at one of the tables and looked around. It was the time between breakfast and lunch, so the crowd was pretty sparse. I spotted Carmen, who smiled and said she'd be right over. A little information about Carmen. She was in her early 30s and was a pleasant-looking woman, but could hardly be called beautiful. She was neat and attractive, with shoulder-length dark hair. She had nice legs and a normal bust, however normal it was. It stuck out, but you couldn't put a beer on it. She couldn't be called thin, but she wasn't fat either. Hell, explaining a woman's facial features was harder than I thought. She had a nice smile. That much I knew for sure. "How can I help you?" she asked. "Just a cup of coffee and a little chat, if you don't mind." "Yes, for coffee, but I don't know about talking," she replied. "Sorry, I don't know how to talk to women. This isn't flirting. I picked your name on the Christmas tree at church, and I want to be your friend for the holidays." "Look, I'm not really sure what you want. I'll just go get you some coffee." I watched as she went to talk to Joe, and he shook his head when she came back with my coffee. "Okay, Joe says there's nothing wrong with you. I get hit on by men quite often, and I don't need that in my life right now. So what do you want? What is a holiday, friend? I know the church put my kids' names on the tree so they could have Christmas, but they never talked about a friend. Friend, this is my idea. Please let me explain. If you want me to just buy the kids a present when I'm done, that's what I'll do." Without going into too much detail, I was watching TV when a guy said that for $24 a month, I could sponsor a child in another country. They would feed them 3 meals a day, give them clothes, schooling, and a roof over their head, all for $24 a month. "Dan, isn't that right? My children's milk costs $24 a month. I can hardly make more than that." She smiled. She had such a beautiful smile. "I know, I agree. I have decided that I will adopt a family from now until the holidays. I want to help you with your material needs through Thanksgiving and Christmas. I want your family to have a memorable Christmas. I'm not rich, but I can spare enough money to try to help one family this year, and I've chosen yours." Carmen's eyes glazed over. "Are you serious? I was so worried about my kids this year. You see, my husband was—" "I know, Carmen. He was murdered. Please let me help you help your children. If you feel I am interfering in your life, just tell me and I will back off." "Why are you doing this? Don't you have a family to help? Not a stranger?" "Look, my wife died 2 years ago. She was killed in a car accident." "God, I'm so sorry for you." "It's okay, Carmen. Anyway, my holidays were pretty lousy, and I wanted to try to help someone else be happy this year. I have 3 grown children. My son is in his 30s, and my daughter, I think, is 29. They are both married and have families of their own. The youngest daughter is a college graduate who is going to England for Christmas. Neither of them are in financial difficulty. So what do you say? Shall we be friends for the holidays?" "You have a kind face, Dan. For the sake of my children, I'll say yes. Please, no tricks. My family and I have been through a lot in the last year. So what do you want me to do? For starters, it would be a good idea to restock the coffee and find out what your needs are. She poured the coffee and said she had to get back to work. Joe was nice, but she has a job to do. We agreed to talk after she left work the next day. I asked her out to dinner, but she said she needed to be around the kids, but I could come to her house and talk there. I could even have dinner with them if I like macaroni and cheese. Tell you what, Carmen, I'll pick up the pizza and we can eat it. Pepperoni and cheese, okay? She smiled. That would be great, but you better bring two pizzas. My 8-year-old can eat half of one by himself. In the evening, I stopped by her house. I didn't realize she lived in the project. For those who don't know about these places, I'll tell you that they are on public assistance provided by social services or children's services. These organizations help with rent, food, and other things. The bad thing is that it is not the best place to live. A lot of drug addicts and undesirables usually live there. Now, I knew I wanted more than anything to help Carmen and her children. I was met at the door by her 8-year-old son. He turned out to be a cute little boy and asked what I needed. I explained that I was a pizza delivery boy and that his mom had invited me to visit. He smiled broadly and said, "Mom said her friend is bringing us pizza today. We don't get pizza at the store that often." As I entered the store, two other children ran up to me shouting, "Pizza, pizza, 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 Mommy, the pizza place is here," a 6-year-old shouted. Carmen entered the store from another room. It was obvious she had gone to clean up. "Kids, where are your manners? I thought I taught you how to behave in company." "Sorry, Mom, we were just a little excited." Her oldest son looked at me. "We don't get visitors very often. Can we have pizza already?" "Kids, this is Dan, my friend. You can call him Uncle Dan or Mr. Dan." I interrupted Carmen. "Or just call me Dan. What's your name?" The older man spoke first. "My name is Mike, and I'm 8 years old." Then the second one spoke up. "My name is Mark, and I'm 6 years old. This is my little sister Molly." "Let me tell you," Molly said. "I know who I am. My name is Molly, and I'm 4 years old, soon to be 5. I go to kindergarten, and I'm very smart." She was the sweetest little girl and looked a lot like her mom. Everyone sat down at the table and started eating pizza. I looked around the room and realized that this was a difficult family. The furniture was old and they didn't seem to have many possessions. Of course, I could only see the kitchen and living room. The TV was on, but the picture wasn't the best. While the kids ate pizza and watched cartoons on the TV, I asked Carmen what she would like help with. "Oh my God, I wasn't prepared for this." "Look, my kids and I are doing fine. We eat pretty well, but they like what the other kids have, and I just can't afford to buy it for them. You've seen our stupid TV with the crappy picture. I bought basic cable so they have something to watch. We buy clothes secondhand, but they are happy with everything they get. They are really great kids. I'm afraid to buy bikes or anything else we have to leave outside. I know they'll get stolen, so Dan, take it to heart. My kids would love any gift." "Okay, I'll see what I can do to help. Your kids look really good." "Mike, since you're the oldest, do you want everyone to go to the movies on Saturday? I heard there's a new Harry Potter movie coming out." "Wow, that would be great. Mom, can we go? Can we?" "I guess so, but only if you kids behave yourselves for the rest of the week." "Carmen, you know that includes you. Maybe we'll eat at McDonald's while we're there." Molly looked up at me. "I like McDonald's. It has Happy Meals and a playground and everything." "Okay, Molly, be a good girl for Mommy, and we'll go there on Saturday." The kids were happy and Carmen was smiling. I decided I had done a good job. Making them happy made me happy. It went on like that for several weekends. We took the kids to places where they could just have fun. I would go to Joe's restaurant for lunch and always sat in Carmen's area. I started leaving her big tips, $10 or so each. "Dan, you don't have to do that. Just make my kids happy. That's all I need." "So you don't need money?" I smiled. "That's not fair, Dan. Of course I can use the money. I just feel awkward, to say the least. I feel indebted to you for everything you do for my kids. Can I make you Thanksgiving dinner or something? I need to do something for you too. I'll talk to the kids now, see what's on our agenda, and get back to you. Carmen, I do this for you because it gives me pleasure. I enjoy helping people who are trying to help themselves. Please don't feel you owe me. Just seeing the look on the children's faces is more than enough payback. Besides, seeing you smile is a pleasure in itself. You could see that this embarrassed her slightly and she looked away. Mandy came home one weekend and asked what was new. I told her about Carmen and how I was trying to help her. Daddy, do you think this is a good idea? You don't know this woman, do you? Honey, it's a new meaning of life for me to help someone and to see the faces of these little ones. Honestly, it makes me feel better about what I'm doing. I started the conversation with Carmen. I want you to meet Carmen and tell me what you think. I don't know, Dad. I feel kind of bad. You say they live in the same neighborhood? Isn't that a pretty bad neighborhood for a single woman with kids? Exactly. That's why I'm trying to help them. Maybe it will help them get back on their feet. Mandy, you've always been my little girl, and now you've grown into a beautiful woman. You don't need my help as much anymore, so I feel like I have to help someone. Tell you what, I'll invite Carmen over so you can meet her and the kids, and you give me your opinion. Okay, Dad, but no promises. I'll be as honest with you as I can be. I won't sugarcoat it. I knew Mandy was a little worried. She was my rock and always looked out for me. I know she would have told me the truth. She was a lot like me. It wasn't characteristic of her to lie. On Saturday, I invited Carmen and the kids over to my house. It was a little chilly, but I decided to grill anyway. I figured that while I cooked outside, Mandy would take care of the grill inside. Carmen showed up in the wrecked car. She had all the kids buckled in and was already unbuckling their seatbelts when Mandy looked at me. Nice car, Daddy, she said, meaning the opposite, of course. What makes you think I'm helping them? What would you say if she drove up in a new car? That's a great idea, Daddy. It's for you, she smiled. Mike and Mark ran up to me. Hey, Uncle Dan. Wow, you guys live here? Wow, what a big house. I introduced the boys to Mandy while Carmen led Molly out of the car. Mike, Mark, this is my little girl, Mandy. Hi, boys, nice to meet you, Mandy replied. Hi, I'm Mike. I'm 8 and Mark is 6. And this is Molly getting out of the car. She's our little sister. She's 4. Molly walked over to me and I picked her up in my arms. Mandy watched me carefully. Molly is my little friend. She's as good as her brothers, just like you, I laughed. Carmen, this is Mandy, my pride and joy and also my youngest daughter. As they greeted each other, I could almost feel their brains working. Finally, Carmen smiled at Mandy and said, Look, I know it's different. I know you have tons of questions about who I am and what I'm doing here. I've been asking myself the same questions. Let's just enjoy this day, and I'll try to answer some of those questions. I think your father is one of the nicest people I've ever met. So show me the kitchen and we can cook together. Men think that since they cook meat, grilling is a whole meal. We women know better. Mandy looked at me. I like her already, Daddy. They smiled at each other and we headed into the house. The kids wanted to explore the house. I told them it was okay, but to stay out of the drawers and run around in there. They went from room to room, came back and told their mom about everything they saw. They asked if they could watch my big screen TV, and I asked them if they wanted to go to the store with me and pick out a couple DVDs to watch. Of course they said, yes, and Molly asked if she could go too. Carmen intervened. Molly, why don't you stay here with me and Mandy and help us cook? We girls need to be together. She must have explained to Molly what was needed, because Molly looked at me and said, Uncle Dan, take the boys and go ahead. I have to help the girls cook. It was so funny to hear that from a 4-year-old. I told her it was okay and that I would rent a movie just for her. I ended up renting the movie The Little Mermaid for her, and she smiled a lot when she watched it. She asked Mandy and her mom to watch it with her. To the boys, she told them they could watch it too, but they had to be quiet. It was so funny to hear her trying to act like an adult. The girls decided that we would spend Thanksgiving at our house. Carmen and Mandy will cook dinner, and I'll keep the kids busy, which wasn't too hard. I have a pool, but it is closed for the winter. However, I also have a hot tub. The kids were going to bring their bathing suits and lounge around in it. Afterwards, they would watch movies on the big TV. We had over a month to plan Thanksgiving dinner, so Mandy said she would contact Brad and Janice and let them know about dinner at our house. She will also tell them about Carmen and the kids. Also, to make sure that anyone who wants to use the hot tub bring their bathing suits. I had a nice chat with Mandy after Carmen and the kids had gone home. Dad, Carmen is a very nice person. She's very compassionate and isn't afraid of work. She told me about her past and her husband's murder. It was horrible, everything she had to go through. I understand why you want to help her, especially with the kids. She doesn't make excuses for her life, and you can see that she is really trying to keep it together. I have to tell you, Daddy, that I think she really cares about you. Of course she cares. I'm helping her and her family. I hope she'll be grateful to me, at least a little. No, Dad, I mean care in the sense of really like, maybe even love. She didn't say that, did she? Daddy, she didn't have to do that. We women can sense things like that. I think you fell in love with her too, Daddy. All I ask is that you be very careful and considerate. Come on, Mandy. I'm just happy for her. This is the happiest I've seen you since Mom died over 2 years ago, Dad. I'm glad to see you happy. I just want you to be more aware of your situation. I knew Mandy was right. I had feelings, strong feelings, for Carmen and the kids. I didn't know where they would lead, but I understood it. I just didn't know anyone else was as observant. I received separate phone calls from Brad and Janet. I did my best to explain that I was helping Carmen during the holidays and that I recognized the family's name from the Christmas tree at church. I think I did a pretty good job of sugarcoating the situation. I explained to them that Carmen wanted to say thank you by helping prepare Thanksgiving dinner. I knew they were a little wary of the situation, but agreed to come to dinner. For the next couple of weeks, Carmen and Mandy helped organize all the events. They acted almost like sisters, with Carmen being the oldest and doing most of the planning. Of course, Mandy went to school most of the week and came home on Fridays. I stopped by almost every day to eat at their restaurant and mostly to see Carmen. At least twice a week, I stopped by her apartment to say hello to the kids and bring them treats. Carmen told me I was spoiling them. I have to say that it bothered me a little when I watched Carmen at her job. She was always so friendly and nice to everyone. I saw men hitting on her, but she always smiled and refused advances or dates. I guess it was natural for me. I had no right to be jealous of her, even for dating, let alone being friends with other people. Chapter 3. Change. On Thanksgiving Day, Carmen and the kids arrived early. She looked very pretty. She wasn't dressed in any particular way, but even in a skirt and blouse, she was a very attractive woman. She and Mandy had already started cooking. Mandy told us that she had invited her boyfriend to dinner as well. I'd met him a few times. He was a paramedic and still taking classes in college, where he met Mandy, who was studying to be a nurse. They were both part of a group going to England to help out at the hospital during the vacations. They would leave the week before Christmas and return home on January 8th the following year. It was less than a month before they left, but it would be sad if she wasn't around during that time. Brad, his wife Gail, and my 2 grandchildren showed up. I hugged them all, and the kids asked when they could swim in the hot tub. I told them I wanted to introduce them to the other kids later. I introduced them to Mike, Mark, and Molly. All the kids seemed to get along fine with each other. We walked to the kitchen and Mandy put her arm around her brother and started introducing him to Carmen. Brad, Gail, this is Carmen, a good friend of mine and Dad. I felt good when she said that. Brad said hello, but I knew the gears were turning in his head. Gail said, hi, and asked the girls if they needed help. No sooner had everyone gotten back to cooking than Janice and her husband Rob came in. We started getting reacquainted, and Janice's kids ran down to the basement to play with the other kids. We had lots of games, coloring books, and things like that for the kids in the basement. It was completely remodeled and had a TV and DVD player, so there was plenty for the kids to do. The women went back to cooking, and us guys tried to stay out of their way. I knew the boys wanted to know more about Carmen. I tried to explain her story to them without showing my feelings. I guess I wasn't very good at it. She looks good, Dad. How old is she? About the same age as me, Brad asked. She's 31 years old, Brad. She's a wonderful person and deserves a little help, put in Rob. Daddy. He always called me Daddy. Aren't you afraid she might fall in love with you or you with her? Look, I'm a widower and she's a widow. Sure, she's a lot younger, but if something happens, so be it. Dad, you haven't been with her. That's a little inappropriate and definitely personal, Brad. Since you're my son, I'll tell you. No, believe it or not, I didn't even try to kiss her. I'll tell you right now that she's a wonderful woman and I care about her. I'm sorry, Dad. I know it's none of my business and you probably miss Mom. After all, it's been 2 years. It has nothing to do with your mom. In case you haven't noticed, I'm a very lively person, and if I find someone attractive, that's my business. I suggest we change the subject. And actually, we'd better go check on all the kids. Your wives are cooking, and you two better babysit. We went downstairs and started watching the kids. Carmen's kids seemed to get along just fine with each other. Every few minutes, Molly would come up to me to talk. I knew it bothered Brad, but Rob thought she was the sweetest little girl. Mandy came downstairs and brought her boyfriend Ross to introduce him to everyone. I've met him a few times and I think he's met Brad before. After the introductions, Mandy went back upstairs and Ross joined the conversation. I just met Mandy's friend Carmen. She's a very nice woman. Mandy told me that her husband was murdered. That's too bad. I called Carmen's kids over and introduced them to Ross. Good kids. It's a shame their father was killed. I think it's great that you're helping them, Mr. Weller. Thanks, Ross. I picked out the name on the tree at church and actually found a family in great need. I didn't want anyone to know that I had asked Pastor Jim to find a certain family. So, Ross, what's new with you? School and work must be taking up a lot of your time. Yes, that's true, but we're going on a trip in a couple weeks. Although it's work-related, I'll have a chance to get away for a while and be with Mandy. How are you and Mandy doing? Brad asked. Ross looked at me, then back at Brad. I love her, and I'm thinking of asking her to marry me when we're in England, in front of Big Ben. You know, the big clock. Mr. Weller, do I have your permission to propose to her? Ross, you don't need my permission. Mandy is a strong-willed woman and quite capable of making her own decisions. If you need my blessing, you'll get it. Is that a sure thing? Should I ask her? I think so, but just in case, I ask that neither of you mention it. I'll try to find out if she's ready to get married before I pop the question. I love her, but I need an affirmative answer, he replied. Our lips are sealed, Ross, and good luck to you. I understood his feelings. Truth be told, I felt the same way he did, but knew it was best not to talk about it right now. The second half of the day went great. Dinner was amazing, and everyone seemed to be enjoying themselves. The kids took turns swimming in the hot tub. I couldn't get any of the adults to get in it. Carmen told me, maybe another time. I knew I would keep her in the loop. As the evening wore on, Mandy and Ross left to be alone. I helped Carmen clean the house. Janice and Gail came over and helped. When we were done, Brad and his family were just about to leave. Brad told Carmen that it was nice to meet her and wished her good luck. He hoped that things would work out for her. Before leaving, Janice pulled me aside. Dad, Carmen is a good person, but she's too young for you. What makes you think that? I'm helping her. Dad, she loves you. Any fool can see that. We asked her if she was dating, and she said she had a boyfriend. Dad, you are that boyfriend. Otherwise, she wouldn't have come here today. Just be careful, Dad. When everyone left, Carmen gathered the kids and told me she had a great time. She liked my family and thought they were all nice. I don't know why I did it, but I leaned forward and kissed her. It was a long, tender kiss. When we pulled away, tears came to her eyes. You didn't have to do that, Dan. I have to go. She picked up the kids, who quickly said goodbye to me, and got into the car. I walked to the car window and said to Carmen, I'm sorry, I stepped out of line. Please forgive me. The problem is, Dan, I've wanted you to do this for so long. With those words, she stopped her old car and headed home. I didn't hear from her on Friday, Saturday, or even Sunday. I was worried about what I had done. On Monday, I went to the restaurant, but she wasn't there. Joe told me that she had to take Molly to daycare today and would be back in a little while. I had to stop by the store and decided to come back at lunchtime. But one of my employees was sick, and I had to stay and work my shift. I tried to give Carmen some space after I stepped out of line. After all, I was supposed to be a vacation buddy, not her lover. I got home and then my cell phone rang. I looked at the caller ID and saw it was Carmen. Hi, Carmen. I'm so sorry. Dan, our apartment was broken into. I just got home after taking the kids and someone took our stuff. Even the old TV. All we have left are our clothes, she cried. I don't know what to do. The police are here now taking a report. They think it was someone looking for things to pawn for drugs. We don't have anything of value, but they took what little we had. God, how awful it was to hear her cry. Carmen, get the suitcases or bags or something and put yours and the kids' clothes in there. I'll be there in about 15 minutes. Everything will be fine. I promise you. Dan, I didn't know who else. It's okay, Carmen. I'm glad I was the one you called. Now go pack your things. I'll be there soon. I got the car and went to get Carmen and the kids. Molly was crying and said she was scared. I told her everything was going to be okay. I would take them all back to my house. Carmen looked up at me in surprise. I thought you were taking us to a motel for the night. No, you're all coming home with me. Put all the stuff you packed in your car. Take my car and the kids. I'll drive yours with your stuff. She didn't ask any questions. She just did what I said. I talked to the police officer and told him they could contact her at my house. I gave him my phone number if he needed to contact us. He told me that they probably won't get any of her stuff back. She didn't list anything of value that could be traced. All they did was trash the apartment pretty badly. I thanked the officer, got into Carmen's clunker, and tried to start it. I was unsuccessful in starting it. The officer helped me start the car and I went home. When I arrived, Carmen and the kids were sitting on the porch. It's open. Why didn't you come in? You weren't here, and we weren't going to just walk in, Carmen replied. Come on, boys, help me get all these bags in. Mike, you and Mark take your stuff to the bedroom with the bunk beds. If it's Molly's stuff or your mom's stuff, put it in the front bedroom, the one across from Mandy's room. You know which one? Yes, sir, the boys' stuff is upstairs and the girls' stuff is downstairs. If you're not sure, put it in the living room and your mom will decide for herself. Carmen, you need to come and talk to me. Molly, why don't you help the boys and make sure they do it right? Of course, Molly liked telling the boys what to do. Dan, what are you doing? We can't live here. What will your kids think? Carmen, you need help right now, today. Let's try to do things my way for a few days. That will give us time to figure out what to do. You and Molly can share the front bedroom, and the boys will be more than comfortable upstairs. Dan, the boys have school and Molly has kindergarten. I have to work. And how does living here get in the way of that? You just have to leave about 15 minutes early. I can help too. Take Molly or the boys to school. Call them tomorrow and explain that your house was broken into and that you're taking the boys to school. Give my name so I can drop them off and pick them up. It'll work out, Carmen, I promise. Dan, I care about you. I like you a lot. Your kids know that, and I need you to know that. You told them? I asked. No, women just know it. Men, I don't know, men think differently. I don't know about your son, Brad, but Mandy, Janice, and Gail all know. I'm sorry, but it's not easy to hide. I wear my feelings on my sleeve, I guess. I'll worry about my kids. You have enough to worry about as it is. Oh, and I'm sorry, but I'm not sorry I kissed you. Just thought you should know. I went upstairs where the boys slept, made sure the dresser drawers were empty, and Carmen helped the boys lay out their clothes. While they were doing that, little Molly and I went downstairs and emptied the dresser drawers in their room. I was glad I had taken my wife's things after she died. It made the task much easier. Everyone entered the room with Molly and me. Molly asked her mom if she could put her things in the drawers. I took the boys and we went to find something for dinner while Carmen put away her personal belongings. The boys and I made hot dogs and macaroni and cheese. When everything was ready, we sat and talked while we ate. Carmen asked me about the house rules. I replied that we would establish them as we went along. We told the kids that they needed permission to do whatever they wanted until we set the rules. They were told that they could not enter my room or office uninvited. They were not allowed near the pool at all. It was closed, but they were still kids. We made sure they understood that they could drown. They could only go in the hot tub with permission from mom or me. It wasn't supposed to be a daily event. They could only watch TV with permission from mom or me. It was their responsibility to keep their room clean. Carmen laughed, knowing the boys weren't the neatest. At least the rules were set. I looked at the boys and Molly, who always smiled at me. Kids, this is your house now. You can be kids and have fun. Just remember to always ask your mom for permission if you're not sure what you should be doing. Uncle Dan, what if we get hungry? Mike asked. We'll eat. That's what I do when I get hungry. Tomorrow, Mom and I will buy you snacks. You'll always have food. Just remember, when it comes to food, your mom is in charge. One more thing, and I mean this. If your mom says no, don't come and ask me. If I say no, don't put your mom on the spot. No means no. Any other questions? Molly raised her hand. That made me laugh. I guessed she'd learned it in kindergarten. What, honey? Carmen asked. Can we play with the toys in the basement? Because they're not ours. Honey, you can play with all the toys we have downstairs. We'll talk to Santa this year, and he'll probably get you some of your own, I told Molly. Molly raised her hand again. Can I go play with them? Yes, honey, you go ahead. I'll come down and stay with you for a while, Carmen said. Molly got up and headed downstairs. Not 10 seconds later, the boys followed her downstairs. One of the boys yelled upstairs, Uncle Dan, can we turn on the TV? I only shouted back, Yeah, go ahead, just not too loud. Carmen walked over to me and hugged me. There were tears in her eyes, and she said, I don't know what I would be doing if it wasn't for you. She pulled away and wiped the tears from her eyes. We didn't kiss or hug again. I knew I had to say something without being funny or too serious. I squeezed her hands and said, I'll always be by your side. Let's go see what the kids are doing. We headed down to the basement together to join the kids. It was like a family. I remembered Annie and I doing the same thing, sitting and watching the kids play. It felt so right. It was getting late, and Carmen told the children that they should take a bath and get ready for bed. There were 3 bathrooms in the big house. She had the boys use the one upstairs and asked if Molly could use the main bathroom on the first floor. Carmen, this is your house now. Of course, Molly can use the large tub and shower. I'll use the shower in the basement if I need to. Please make yourself at home. While Carmen got the kids ready for bed, I went to my office to do some work on my books. When I looked up, I saw Molly looking at me through the doorway. She was dressed in her little nightgown. It was obvious she had just gotten out of the shower. Hey, Molly, do you need anything? I want to kiss you goodnight, but Mom said I can't come into your office unless you say I can. Come in, honey. She ran into the house, and I had to lean back in my chair as she climbed into my lap. She wrapped her little arms around my neck and kissed my cheek. Good night, Uncle Dan, she said. Good night, sweetheart. Where's Mommy? She's upstairs arguing with Mikey and Marky. Well, let's go and see if we can help. Molly ran on and up the stairs, and I followed her. We caught them in the middle of their conversation. But Mom, Mike always gets his way because he's older. I just asked for the top bunk, and he said he's older, so he gets to choose. Carmen looked at Mike and Molly, and I just stood back and listened. Is that what you said, Mike? You said you get everything first because you're older? Yeah, I guess, but I'm older than my mom, and I need to be treated like I'm older. Mike, you're 2 years older than your brother. That should make you 2 years smarter. You think it's worth arguing about what bed you sleep in? I'll tell you what, he's your little brother, and he's always looking up at you. Come up with a plan to share the top bed, and you can both agree. Mike looked at Mark. Okay, Mark, I'll tell you what. You can have the top bunk this month, and next month I'll have it. We'll alternate and change every month. Is that okay with you? Yeah, thanks, Mike. You're a great big brother, he said, climbing into the top bunk. You feel good inside, don't you, Mike? His mom asked him. Yeah, I guess so, Mom. Carmen kissed her sons, and we headed downstairs where she tucked Molly into bed. I need to get back to my papers. And I need to shower and get ready for bed myself, Carmen replied. I walked back to my office and heard the shower running. I couldn't help but think of Carmen in the shower. When the shower was over, Carmen came out in her nightgown and robe. Her hair was still damp from the shower. Good night, Dan, and thanks again for everything. I looked up and asked, Is there anything you don't look your best in? She smiled and headed for the bed. I could smell her scent from the shower. I took a few deep breaths and continued working on the book. Our first morning passed in a rush, rush, rush. She asked me to call Joe and warn him that she might be a little late. She needed to stop by the school and daycare so they knew I could pick up the kids if needed. She also needed to apply for a change of address. I called Joe and he asked me if I was serious about Carmen. He didn't want her to get hurt. He was in his 60s and had been married for over 40 years. I got the feeling that he was looking out for Carmen. His wife worked as a cook in a restaurant. so I knew he was genuinely interested in Carmen's welfare. I made it clear to him that I would never hurt Carmen or the children. I was trying to help them, but I had feelings for all of them. In the evening, we went back to her old apartment and packed everything she wanted, which wasn't much. She turned in her keys to the office and informed us that she had moved out and paid a month's rent. There was no need to notify her as the apartment had been broken into. Mike and Mark came with me in the truck, and Carmen and Molly in her clunker. When we got back to the house, the phone rang. Carmen answered, and it was Mandy. Mandy asked Carmen why she was in the house, and Carmen started to explain to her how her apartment had been broken into and she and her kids were almost homeless until I offered to let her stay with me. Mandy asked to talk to me. "Dad, are you sure about this? You know she loves you, right?" "What do you think I should have done, Mandy? Just give her money and say, 'Go and manage on your own'?" "I care about her, you know that. We're adults and we haven't done anything wrong. In fact, I'm really glad she and the kids are here. It's almost like the good old days." "I just want to say, Dad, that it's a fine line you walk. I really like Carmen as a sister, you know that. I just want to say that you two need to be careful and realize what you're doing. Now, can I talk to Carmen again?" She talked to Carmen, and they talked for about 20 minutes while the boys and I took the rest of the stuff we had left into the house and put it away or stored it in the basement. "What did she want after I gave you your phone back?" I asked. "Mostly girl stuff, but she's worried about you and me." "What's there to worry about? My God, we're adults. Hell, I'm in my 50s and I've come so far. I'm sure I can make good decisions for a decrepit old man who has no mind of his own. Dan, she knows how much I care about you. I told her that myself, and now you know. I tried to explain that I had no idea where this was going, but you helped me and the kids. I am eternally grateful to you for that. But my feelings overpowered my gratitude. Mandy is worried that one of us will get hurt in this relationship. I told her I would never come between you and your family. Okay, let's just keep living one day at a time. Maybe time is the answer." At that moment, Mike and Mark walked in. "Uncle Dan, can we all go to the hot tub?" I looked at Carmen, then at the kids. "Only if your mom comes in. I don't want you kids going in there alone." "Come on, Mom, please come in. Please, we're begging you, Mom. You're going to love it. It's warm and nice and lots of bubbles. Please, Mommy." "Okay, boys. I'm going to be gone for a while. Go and get your suits on. Molly, go get yours and I'll be right there." She turned to me. "You're the one who set me up, aren't you?" I just smiled and she smiled back. She went and put on a two-piece swimsuit. "Are you happy now?" she asked, walking past me and smiling. "Very much so. You look good in anything. I bet you even look good naked," I smiled. "Pervert," she replied, heading towards the hot tub with a smile. The kids were already waiting for her. Damn, she looks so much prettier, I thought as she climbed into the tub. This woman has everything. A few minutes later, I handed Carmen her drink. She smiled and said, "The water is very pleasant. My sick body really needs it." The kids just sat there watching the bubbles bounce off of them. "Thanks, Uncle Dan. This is really cool. I mean hot. No, not nice." "Well, you know what I mean," Mike replied. I took one more look at Carmen and headed into the office to finish my paperwork. Later, I heard everyone retreating into the house and getting ready for bed. I knew that in a few minutes I would see Molly peeking into my office. She was smiling and waiting for me to tell her it was okay to come in. No person with any feelings could have rejected this little girl. The same could be said for her mom. Molly came in, climbed into my lap, kissed and hugged me. "Good night, Uncle Dan. I'll see you in the morning." Like I said, I had a gas station, self-service, and a small grocery store. I no longer repaired cars, but I had a tow truck that I used from time to time. Carmen called me and told me that her car wouldn't start again. I was starting to get annoyed with this old car. I took the tow truck and drove to the diner to pick Carmen up. There were two guys there who said they would hook up her battery. I know they were trying to hit on her and probably wanted to jump her bones. She told me later that she told them no thanks and that her friend would come get her in the car. When I pulled up in the tow truck, the two guys backed off. I looked at Carmen and told the guys that, "Thanks for helping my fiancé, but that I would take it from here." Apparently that made them nervous as they left pretty quickly. I hooked up her clunker and she climbed into the truck. Since it was mounted so high, I could see a lot of legs. Climbing into the cab, she took her time straightening her dress. Thanks for coming, Dan. I told you I'd always be there for you, and I meant it. Are you mad that someone else offered to help me? Yes and no. I want everyone to know what a wonderful person you are. But I guess it bothers me when people pick on you. I haven't done anything wrong, Dan. I know, I was just answering your question. Besides, I don't own you. You told those guys I was your fiancé. Why did you say that? I didn't bother to answer her question. I just walked down the road and pulled into the junkyard. What are we doing here, Dan? I'll give you a couple $100 for this pile of junk. You've gotten enough in it already. Get your personal stuff out and put it all in this garbage bag. We'll sort it out later. Dan, what am I supposed to be carrying? We'll talk later. We need to hurry so we can get the kids in time to pick them up. She stowed all her personal belongings in the truck, along with the rest of her shoes and the kids' toys. We signed the certificate of title and got $300 for the clunker. We picked up Molly's car seat and headed home. I opened the garage door and told Carmen she could drive my old car. It only had 8,000 miles on it and was 4 years old. I'd bought it with the insurance money I'd gotten for Annie's car after the accident. Needless to say, her car was totaled. I usually drove the truck, so the car was rarely used. The only time I drove it was to take Carmen and the kids out. She put Molly's car seat in it and drove off to get the kids. When they came back, Mark told me that they had bought a new car. It was much nicer than their mom's old car. Dan, I'll pay you for the car. How much do you want? Carmen, just drive the damn car. You need something better, and this is a damn good car. That way I'll keep it in my name and keep paying the insurance. It'll save you a few more bucks. Dan, I hate to say this, but what if we don't stay together? You know, if I move somewhere else? Are you thinking about moving? God, no. I was just wondering what I'd do with the car if you kicked us out. God, Dan, I didn't mean to make it seem like I was leaving. I'm sorry. I couldn't believe this was the first time we'd ever fought over that stupid car. Carmen, I promise you that you will never be without a car. If you want me to put it in writing, I will. I was just worried about you in that old car. I want you to be safe and here with me. I couldn't believe it, but she came up to me and kissed me. I didn't know if it was an impulse or what, but it felt good. Molly looked at her brothers and said, Mommy just kissed Uncle Dan. Kids, it was a thank you for letting us use his car. No, kids, it's your mom's car now, not mine. She kissed me because I gave her the car. Carmen turned around and kissed me again. Okay, everyone, time to get ready for dinner. Do you want me to cook for you, or do you want Mom to drive us all to McDonald's in her new car? To McDonald's, everyone shouted. Chapter 4. Shit hits the fan. Friday. I was at the store and Carmen was at work, of course. My kids, Brad, Janice, and Mandy, came into the store to see me. Daddy, we need to talk to you. Can we all go over to your house for a little while? It was more of a statement than a question. Sure, go on home. I'll be there in a few minutes. Just let me in. I knew where this was going, and I was pretty much ready for it. I headed home and walked into the house. Everyone, my 3 kids, was sitting in the living room. Dad, this is about Carmen and her kids. It looked like Brad was going to be the spokesperson for the group. Damn it, Brad. You spent 2 hours driving here for this conversation. I've already guessed why. What the hell did Carmen do that you dislike her so much? I don't dislike her, Dad. It's just that one day you're helping her, and the next day she's living here with her kids. I notice your car's gone too. I take it you gave it to Carmen to drive. Since you are my children, I will try to explain everything to you. But before I begin, I want to say that I am very disappointed in all of you. Daddy, I think this woman is using you. I think you're a single mom, and then this woman comes along and you fall in love with her, and she feels it. She knows you have needs and she meets them. You fell in love with her, and now she knows she's doing well, and her kids are well taken care of. Mandy jumped up. Bullshit, Brad. You may think that, but I know Carmen a lot better than you do. She would never do that to Daddy. I think she just loves him. And to be honest, I think Daddy loves her too. I'm here more to support Dad and Carmen than I am for you, Brad. Brad, if you weren't my son, I'd probably knock you off your chair. Let's start with Carmen breaking into the house. What do you think I should have done, Brad? Give her money? Maybe avoid her and tell her it's her problem. Brad, I did what my heart thought was right, not my groin. Janice spoke up. Dad, are you telling me that you've never had sex, Janice? No. Carmen and I haven't had intimacy yet. Not that it's any of you guys' business what we do. Now, for a big surprise, I'm thinking of asking Carmen to marry me. What? Brad said. Dad, you hardly know this woman. She's got a lot of baggage, not to mention 3 kids. Dad, I have to agree with Brad. Carmen is closer to my age. Isn't she awfully young for you? Janice asked. Look, guys, I'm on my own. You're all 3 on your own, or almost on your own as far as Mandy is concerned. I found a woman I care about, and according to Mandy and of course Carmen, she cares about me. I have a large house that I am willing to share with a beautiful woman and her 3 children. Why are you so against it? Brad spoke up. Okay, Dad, let's say you love each other and want to be together. She has 3 young children. Do you really want to start over and raise 3 more kids? I'm crazy about having 3 kids. To play with boys like you and I did with Brad. Molly hugs me and sits on my lap like my 2 girls did when they were little. They are good kids, and I think I can make a big difference in their lives. Dad, you're looking through rose-colored glasses. These aren't your children. They're not your flesh and blood like we are. Do you really think you can take care of and raise these kids for the next, say, 20 years, and they're not even your own? I'm sorry, Dad, but I don't think you're going to want to spend that many years raising kids who aren't even yours. What do you think, Janice? Maybe they should be my flesh and blood too. Daddy, I don't know. I love you, Daddy, and you'll always be my father. Will you be able to raise someone else's child? I really don't know. Janice, let me phrase it differently. You would have loved me all your life if I wasn't your father. Of course, you've known that since you could think for yourself. Would you consider me your father, or would you consider someone else? You are my father, and that's too hypothetical. I don't know what I would think. I guess since you've been paying my bills all my life and raising me as your own, I'd consider you my real father. I don't know what that has to do with you raising Carmen's kids. I'll be back in a minute. I have something to show you. I went back and took all the DNA tests that had been done for us. When I got back, I tried to explain some of it to the kids. Mom and I have been keeping some secrets from you. We were never going to tell you about what I'm about to show you. It might even be a mistake to show it to you now, but this Carmen kid story has gotten out of hand. I love those babies, and I know I could be a good father to them. I'll show you my reason right now. I handed each of them copies of their and my DNA. What's this, Daddy? Janice asked. These are the results of the DNA test on Brad and you. See, it says here that you are brother and sister. That means you have the same biological parents. And here are Mandy's results. And as you can see, not all of the same blocks are marked here. That means it's likely that only one of her parents could be yours and Brad's. Mandy started to cry. Are you telling me that you are not my biological father? No, Mandy, here is my DNA. I am not Brad's or Janice's biological father. Everyone was in complete shock. There was complete silence as their brains digested the information they had received. What? Brad shrieked. Bullshit! You've always been my father. Janice cried. Is that why you asked me about my father, Daddy? Now I can answer honestly. You are my father. I don't care what some stupid test said. You are my father and always will be. I love you so much, Dad. I just came here today to tell you that I hope you didn't make a mistake with Carmen. I'm so confused, Dad. I just want you to be happy. I thought I was taking care of you. She was still crying, and I hugged her. Mandy came over and cried with her, for it was her sister. Brad asked, are you going to tell us the story about our sperm donor father and how long you've known about it? First, Brad, I want you and Janice to know that I have always considered the 2 of you my children. From the moment I found out until now, nothing has changed except for what you both know. You have been and always will be my son, and Janice will always be my daughter. I tell you this because you need to know that it's not just blood that holds a family together. It's also love and compassion. I was going to tell them the story of their sperm donor father. The only thing I was going to change was telling them when I found out about it. I love them as my own family, and I want them to believe that I always knew about it. The routine with their mother was dead, and I didn't want them to know we were going to divorce. Your mom and I got married very early on. Me and a guy named Harvey Kittle both loved your mother. Harvey also loved a woman named Mary, got her pregnant, and they got married. Of course, I was happy to get your mother for myself and asked her to marry me. We got married and I was very happy. A few years later, your mother told me that she had married the evil Harvey. The four of us stayed friends and your mom got pregnant. It was from you, Brad. 2 years later, she got pregnant again with Janice. Shortly after Janice was born, Harvey died and your mom became depressed. One day she broke down and told me that you two were Harvey's children. I was shocked and didn't know what to do. We broke up for about a month to give ourselves time to deal with the situation. I missed my two young children. Annie and I talked and decided to give it a try. After that, your mom became the best wife a man could ever dream of. She fell in love with me, and I always loved you as if you were my own children. Then Mandy came along, and Annie said she was mine for sure. And that was the end of it. You all know how we lived after that. We had a wonderful family until your mom had her accident. Dad, why did you get tested to give me a kidney if you weren't my birth father? Brad, I hoped and prayed to God that I was a match for you. You were my son, and I would have given you my kidney in a second if we were a match. Asked Janet. Dad, did you ever take a match test before Brad went into the hospital? No, it was very expensive at the time, and I had no reason to do it. Since your mom had already told me the truth, there were no surprises. Of course, when I took the test, there was no doubt, but I wasn't surprised. By the way, I have the test results of all your families. Brad, you and Gail are the biological parents of your children. Janice, you and Rob are also the parents of your children. Just in case you want to know, now that we're talking about it, you don't need to tell anyone about this conversation. Your mother was a good mother and wife. Let's just leave it at that. I'm sorry, Dad, I made such a fool of myself. I guess I was thinking more about how it would affect us than how it would affect you and Carmen. At those words, my son began to cry. I hadn't seen him this emotional since his mother's funeral. Brad, I know that in situations like this, people always worry about their inheritance. It's not a good thing, but that's how real life is. I think you guys are more worried about your inheritance than you are about Carmen and my well-being. I think reality set in when I saw Brad and Janice looking at the floor. Look, you three will always be in my will. My estate is arranged so that each of you will get a fair share. I just want you to know that I'm disappointed that you didn't show compassion for Carmen and her children. Janice was still crying. I think the thought of her not being my daughter overpowered even the thought of inheritance. Janice kept hugging me and telling me that she didn't believe the stupid test, that I was her father and would remain so. I just hugged her back and snuggled up to her. I started to hug Mandy when Carmen pulled up. Well, guys, looks like we're all going out to dinner. Unless you want to tell Carmen why you're all here, I said. Carmen walked in. Hey, everyone. What brings everyone here? Mandy thought quickly. It's my last day off and we all decided to go out to dinner. Oh gosh, that would be great. Give me a minute to change into my waitress uniform. Kids, talk to Mandy, Janice, and Brad while Mom gets dressed. Molly walked over to the seated Brad and gave him a hug. Hi, Brad. I like you. Brad looked at me. It got to him what I was talking about. Mike walked over to Janice and asked, You brought your kids over so we can play. We are learning to share our toys better. Janice replied, No, honey, they're at home. Maybe you can come visit them after Christmas. Can I, Uncle Dan, please? I've never been to their house. We'll see, Mike. Christmas is still a couple weeks away, I replied. Mandy asked Mark what new things had happened. We got a new car and Mom kissed Uncle Dan. Everyone looked at me. That's when Carmen walked in and saved the day. Yes, Mike, I kissed him twice for letting us use the car. In fact, we're going to use it right now to drive to dinner. Come on, kids, get in the car. Uncle Dan will be driving, so you all have to sit in the back. After we ate, Brad came over to us and we talked privately. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm a fool. I shouldn't have questioned you. No, you're right to wonder about what might be affecting you, Brad. It's just the way you acted. I want you to question my actions if they bother you greatly. We'll discuss this like father and son until we understand each other. He smiled when I said father and son. Later, I talked about it with Janice as well. I wanted my children to always know that I was there for them. To this day, I don't know if I did the right thing by telling them that, but the deed was done. Mandy asked if I would babysit because she wanted to go Christmas shopping with Carmen. I asked if they could grab something for me too. I gave them a list and hopefully enough money. I said they could leave the items in storage and I would pick them up later. I wanted to buy the kids bicycles. Every kid should have a bike, and they now lived in a neighborhood where they could ride them. I pulled Carmen aside. Do you need money for shopping? No, I'm not shopping for myself, just for you and the kids for Christmas. I got this $300 when my friend sold my old car. I knew she was too proud to take more money. She wanted to give the kids nice things without spoiling them, and that wasn't easy to do. I asked Carmen if I could use her car to take the kids shopping, and she laughed. Just be careful with it and don't eat in it. I only got it a few days ago. She smiled. I took the kids to Santa and took a picture with him. I told all three of them that we were shopping for Mom for Christmas. They could pick out the gift they wanted to give her. Uncle Dan, Mark said, I don't have any money. I want to buy Mom something nice. Okay, kids, here's what I'll do. I'm going to give each of you $20 for shopping. It's only for your mom, not for yourselves. So look for things that cost less than $20. Uncle Dan, can we carry the money ourselves? Mike asked. Okay, but keep them in your pocket so you don't lose them. Only take them out when you are ready to pay for the gift. I gave each boy a $20 bill, and they folded them up and put them in their pocket. Molly had a small purse with her junk in it, and we found a place in it for her money. Of course, the kids had no idea what money was and were looking at very expensive things. Seeing that this wasn't too good, I took them to a store geared towards kids. They walked the kids around the store and showed them what they could buy with the money they had. I told the clerk that if they wanted to buy anything extra, to let me know. I couldn't believe how hard these little ones were working to find the right thing for their mom. The oldest Mike came up to me and asked if I would lend him $5. Uncle Dan, Mommy loves unicorns and this one costs $25. Could you loan me the difference? Well, Mike, you said on loan. That means you have to pay me back. I'll offer you a deal. I'll give you the difference, and you wash my truck. Deal? Thanks, Uncle Dan, and ran back to buy the unicorn. Mark was watching a movie. I walked over to him and said, Mark, you were supposed to be shopping for your mom. Yes, Uncle Dan. Mom likes Titanic, the story of the ship. She also likes the movie Shrek. It made her laugh. I don't have enough money for both movies, and I'm trying to decide which one to buy. Take both, Mark. Here's the extra money you'll need. When Mike washes my truck, you have to help him. Thanks, Uncle Dan. Mom will like them. I looked at the woman trying to help Molly. Molly continued to shake her head negatively. What's the matter, Molly? Can't you find what you need? None of them smell like Mom, and I need one that smells like her. I looked at the saleswoman and whispered, White diamonds. She answered me in a whisper. Sir, the little girl only has $20, and white diamonds are worth $50. Tell her you have a special offer on that bottle, and she can have it for $20, and I'll give you the difference. Molly, said the saleswoman, I have a bottle of perfume. Does it smell like your mom? That's right, it smells like Mom. Do I have enough money? Molly asked. You're in luck. This is our last bottle, and it's worth exactly $20. Molly smiled broadly, opened her little purse, and pulled out the money. We picked up our purchases and headed off to see Santa. I held all the presents while the kids talked and took pictures with the big man in red. Afterward, I asked the kids if they wanted to help me find a present for Mandy. She is going to England, and I wanted to buy her some new luggage. I had already paid for her trip as a Christmas present. The kids were happy to help me. Of course, I acted like I really needed their help. I walked over to where the luggage was lying and waited for one of the boys to pay attention to it. This way, Uncle Dan, the suitcases are over here. Thank you, boys. Now I need a kit with 5 items in it. Of course, the boys knew their numbers and looked around until they saw a set with 5 pieces of luggage. I want to help, Uncle Dan. What can I do? Molly exclaimed. Honey, you can pick a color for Mandy. Pick a color that you think she'll like. Molly walked over to the set, which was bright pink. The boys told her that it should have 5 pieces, but the pink one only had 3. Molly continued her search and found one, which was a dark shade of blue. The boys said it had 5 parts, so that's what we bought. Thank goodness the pink set only had 3 parts. We stopped at the burger place, had lunch, and headed home. We took our bags into the house and the kids asked where they could hide their mom's presents. They gave them to me to put in the cabinet. I told them to put Mandy's luggage on her bed so she could see it when she got home. We picked out a Christmas card for Mandy and all 3 kids signed it themselves, including Molly. I told the kids that the gift would be from them. After the girls came back, the boys had to tell Mandy to go to her room. Sure enough, she saw the luggage and the card from the kids. They were all grinning like Cheshire cats looking at Mandy. She hugged and kissed each of them, thanking them for the wonderful gift. The next few weeks flew by. Between work and the kids going to school, we kept busy all the time. We bought a Christmas tree and put up Christmas decorations. For the first time in 3 years, I had a Christmas tree. The presence of the children made the whole holiday season wonderful. Mandy left for England and we told Janice and Brad we would visit them on the 26th, the day after Christmas. The preparations for Christmas were very hectic, but the evenings were wonderful. Every night the 5 of us would sit in the living room and watch all the Christmas programs. I knew that's what I wanted to do. I went shopping and bought Carmen a few things and gave her a gift certificate to a women's store. I figured she could buy what she wanted on her own. I went to the jewelry store and bought her an engagement ring. Then I bought her a very sexy red satin and lace nightgown. Those 2 things were my special gift to her. Christmas morning came and the kids were excited. The boys came downstairs and said that Santa Claus had come and that there were lots of presents under the tree. I told them to look in their stockings and I made coffee myself. It was such a beautiful sight to watch the 3 children that morning. Even more beautiful was the happiness and joy that appeared on Carmen's face each time one of the children opened a gift. Carmen was opening gifts from her children. She was so excited. From Mark, she got her favorite movies. From Mike, she got a unicorn. And from Molly, she got perfume. Molly said, "Mommy, that was the last bottle and I just had enough money." Carmen looked at the bottom, saw the $50 price tag, looked at me and smiled. I received some nice gifts from Carmen. I didn't expect her to buy me anything, but it was all so nice. She said Mandy told her what I liked, and she tried to buy me what she could. On the Christmas tree, I had 3 cards. I addressed one to each of the kids. I hid each of them a bicycle somewhere in the house, and they were told where to find it. I have never seen 3 happier children receiving their first bikes. Molly already had a bike, but we bought her training wheels to start with. We bought them for Mark too, but we knew he wouldn't use them. His older brother didn't have them. While the kids played with their toys, I handed Carmen a big box of sexy nightgowns. "Wow, these are beautiful. What made you buy these?" Carmen asked. I handed her a small package. "These are enclosed." When she opened it, she cried. When she opened the box and saw the ring, I asked her to marry me. She cried and hugged me. "Why, Dan, why?" "Because I love you and these 2 months have been the best for me. I want you and the kids to always be with me. So the answer is yes?" "Dan, the answer is no. Please hear me out before you jump to conclusions. I love you with all my heart. I am sincere about that. For now, the answer is no." "I don't understand. Is it because of my age?" "Dan, please let me finish. No, it's not about your age. It's about us. We've only known each other for a couple months. It's been a couple of the best months of my life, but it's still only a couple months. You decided to help a family in need. You've done more for this family than you can imagine. After the holidays, things will go back to normal. People will be themselves again. I have a proposition for you." "Okay, I'm listening." "I want to rent out our rooms. I'll give you $200 a week to cover expenses. You can get more if you let me. I want us to be a family and live as a family. If in 6 months or sooner you decide it's not working out, just tell me and we'll make a different arrangement. I just want you to be sure. It takes time to get used to a woman in your house and 3 kids. I need help paying for myself and being productive. I need your family to see that I'm not some fly-in slut who wants your money. I need you to realize that I really do love you, and it's not just words. Time, Dan, all I'm asking for is time. I'm not going anywhere until you send me away." She handed the ring back to me and kissed me again. She asked if she could keep her nightgown. I think I understood what she was trying to say. We shouldn't rush into marriage, but we should make sure it's something we both really want. I figured I could live with that, but I hoped to get closer to her sexually and lovingly. Our day was busy with the kids playing with their toys. It was cold outside, but since it wasn't snowing, the kids wanted to ride their bikes. Carmen and I put on our coats and watched them ride their new bikes. About mid-afternoon, we got a call from England. It was Mandy. She was calling to let us know that Ross had proposed to her and she had accepted. He proposed to her in front of Big Ben within hours. They're getting married next June. We told her how happy we were for her and wished each other a Merry Christmas. In the evening, we watched the movie A Christmas Story together, and then the kids went to bed. They all came in and thanked me for the best Christmas ever. I sat on the bed and listened to Carmen take a shower. I knew that when she was done, the wonderful smell would spread throughout the hallway. A few minutes later, the lights came on in the bathroom and then in the hallway. Carmen stood at my door in her sexy new nightgown. "Can I come in?" I didn't even answer as she walked in and closed the door. "Dan, like I told you before, I love you, but we need to postpone the wedding until you get to know me better. I want it to start tonight. Will you make love to me?" I was stunned, but she saw the smile on my face. She walked over to the bed. I pulled back the covers, and she slipped inside and lay down next to me. The only source of light in the room was the reading lamp I was using. I left it on so I could see the woman I'd been thinking about for the past 2 months. It was an unforgettable night, but when I woke up in the morning, she wasn't in my bed. I got up and looked into her room. She and Molly were sound asleep. I went into the kitchen and put the coffee on to boil. After everyone woke up, we had breakfast, and then we had to get dressed because we were going to Janice and her family. We would be having a big Christmas dinner in a day. Brad and his family were there too. We exchanged gifts, and I was surprised that they bought something for Carmen and the kids. Carmen bought something for both Brad and Janice's kids. Mandy told Carmen that we always buy gifts for the kids, but we don't usually buy for the adults. Brad just told her that Gail saw the sweater and thought it would look good on Carmen. Everyone talked about Christmas and the gifts they would get. Mandy called them to tell them about the upcoming wedding. Brad looked at me. I knew he was wondering if I had proposed to Carmen. Later, he came over to me and apologized again for his act from a couple of weeks ago. "Dad, did you propose to Carmen?" "As a matter of fact, I did, but she turned me down." "What? I can't believe it. I really believe she loves you, Dad. What happened?" "Time, Brad. She said it's too soon for me to just pick up and marry a woman with 3 kids. She wants to make sure I'm doing the right thing. What's more, she wants to contribute money to the household. She doesn't want handouts. She wants a loving relationship. So that's exactly what we're going to do. Give ourselves time." "Wow, Daddy, I've never met a woman like that. Daddy, I know it sounds silly after all I've said, but don't lose her. She's a special woman. Time, Brad, will just give her time." Chapter 5. Someday later, life went on and we became a family. Carmen and I took turns cooking. We had a joint checking account into which I put $400 a week and Carmen put her $200. From this account, we paid utilities and bought groceries. We decided that any large purchases we would discuss first. So far, we didn't need anything. I usually stopped by Joe's for lunch, but left when Carmen could sit with me for a few minutes. We really were like a married couple, except we didn't fight and made love every chance we got. I remember our first time in the hot tub. Good thing we had a good filter. When it came to making love, Carmen was the best. Maybe it was the fact that I loved her so much, and that definitely makes the sex that much better. The only time we had to watch her was when Mandy was home on weekends. We would ask Mandy to watch the kids while we went somewhere. We're sure Mandy noticed this, but never said anything. Time flew by and it was almost time for Mandy's wedding. She asked Carmen to be her maid of honor. This made Carmen cry. She said that she had never had such close friends and family. Mandy would have liked Molly to be her flower maid, but decided to ask one of her nieces, which she did. The wedding preparations were very hectic. Mandy had graduated from college, we were planning this wedding, and my girlfriend was the maid of honor. At least the weather warmed up and I was able to get the pool open. When Mandy and Carmen were running around doing wedding stuff, The kids and I just got in the pool. The pool was a great babysitter and all I had to do was stay close by. And the closer we got to the wedding, the more I thought about Carmen and myself. I loved these kids and I knew they loved me. I was going to surprise Carmen at the wedding. I would have to ask a few favors, but I hoped it would work out. Carmen and I hadn't talked about the wedding since Christmas. The day of Mandy's wedding, I wore a tuxedo. Brad and Rob were in the wedding party. Janice and Gail were too. Everyone was dressed up and the wedding was to start in a few minutes. Carmen was supposed to be running around as a bridesmaid. I had nothing to do, but I talked to Carmen's kids. I told them they could come and sit with me. Mike, Mark, and Molly sat in the front row. Of course, Molly sat next to where I was sitting. I told them they should be quiet and just watch the wedding. I told them I had to leave and come back and then walk Mandy down the aisle. I hoped they would listen to me. All the family members were at the wedding. The music started, and Ross, Brad, and Rob stood up front with the minister. Janice was the first to walk down the aisle. As she stepped forward, the kids waved and said, "Hi, Aunt Janice." At least they said it softly. Gail walked next, and the result was the same. "Hi, Aunt Gail," she said a soft hello to the children. The kids were excited because their mom was walking down the aisle. "Hi, Mommy, you look very pretty." They said it a little louder. Carmen smiled but put her finger to her lips to calm them down a little. The flower girl and the ring bearer came down the aisle next. They were Janice and Rob's children, so the kids kept waving at them. All the children from both families were smiling. The music changed and Mandy walked down the aisle with me. We both had tears of joy running down our cheeks. As Mandy and I reached the front of the church, I heard Molly say rather loudly, "Wow, Aunt Mandy looks like a princess." A few chuckles erupted in the crowd and I saw a smile on Mandy's face. I couldn't think of a better compliment. I stepped back and sat down. Looking up, I saw my family. My daughter Janice, my daughter-in-law Gail, who I treated like a daughter, and my beautiful girlfriend who I truly loved. Also standing there was my baby girl getting married and my future son-in-law, and to his right were my son Brad and my son-in-law Rob. Rounding out the ceremony were my two grandchildren, the ring bearer and the flower girl. My other two grandchildren sat with their grandparents. I thought about what a blessed person I am. I have such a wonderful family. I loved each and every one of them. At the reception, all the kids were pretty much together. Everyone was kind of looking out for them. We ate and then the dancing started. I looked up and on the first number, my Carmen came out to dance with me. "I love you, Carmen." "I love you too, Dan." "Are you serious, Carmen? Is this really what you want?" "Dan, deep down, I really mean it." And she kissed me in front of everyone. She didn't usually do that. Our kisses usually happened in private. As the evening went on, it was time to toss the bouquet. All the single girls came out, and Brad told Carmen to come out since she was single. She felt awkward, so she stepped out onto the parquet. On the count of 3, Mandy threw the bouquet right at Carmen. Some of the girls jokingly screamed. Mandy then sat down and Ross took off her garter. All the guys applauded when they saw part of Mandy's thigh. Next, all the single guys had to go out and catch the garter and then put it on the leg of the girl who caught the bouquet, which of course was Carmen. I was one of those guys. I stood there and Ross looked at me. "Sorry, guys, this belongs to my father-in-law," holding out the garter to me. Of course, everyone was wondering what was going on, including Carmen. She was asked to sit down while I put the garter on her leg. I got down on one knee as my hand slid the garter up her leg. When I reached her hip, I stopped, reached into my pocket and pulled out my wedding ring. I was already on my knees. "Carmen, I've waited another 6 months. In the presence of all my family and friends, I ask you, will you marry me?" Everyone stood in complete silence, waiting for her answer. Then Molly emerged from the crowd of people. She looked at her mother, who had tears in her eyes, and said, "Say yes, Mommy." "Dan, I love you with all my heart. I will do anything to make you happy. Yes, I will marry you." Everyone started screaming. Mandy walked over to Carmen and they both cried. I doubt there was a single dry eye in the audience, but I knew my eyes weren't dry when I walked over and kissed my bride-to-be. Epilogue. We are now happily married. Carmen left her job at Joe's Diner and now helps run the gas station and convenience store. Everyone loves her and says it's nice to work at such a family-oriented place. We are deciding if I should adopt children. I told Carmen I wanted to, and she said it would have to wait a little while. Molly already calls me Daddy, and the boys sometimes call me Daddy, and sometimes Uncle Dan. I think they do it to confuse some of their new friends. I look back on my life and wonder what would have happened to my family if I had known about Harvey Kittle all those years ago. I also think about what would have happened to my family if Annie hadn't died in that accident. Life is a very fragile thing. One mistake early in life can change the future forever. It's really something to think about. I'm sitting on the couch with my new wife. We cuddle while my new family plays on the floor, and we watch TV together. Today we are going to watch a love story. Mark bought his mom Titanic for Christmas, and we are going to watch it together. Everyone except Molly, she'll fall asleep halfway through. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.